Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we helped, we essentially defeated a group of Black Legion Space Marines and Traitor Guardsmen who decided to attack a inquisitorial, it's a Tempest, a citadel, but it's an inquisitorial citadel effectively, and were attempting to execute scrap code, which is just a virus, in an attempt to destroy some data in part of the Citadel, and it turns out that was all just a distraction for another force to attack somewhere. But before we can get to wherever they're attacking, we have to talk to Captain Van Winter.
I have a pleasant surprise for you, Inquisitor.
You took your time, Inquisitor, but saving the Archive from the Black Legion intruders was a valuable contribution to our cause. Still, our work isn't over yet. While we were cleaning up the mess on the Tempesta Citadel, the whole Nereus system was hit by a full-scale invasion by the Black Legion. You will not leave until the presence of chaos has been eradicated and their unholy influence has been cauterized. The Emperor protects.
The whole system is under attack, but according to the intercepted Vox messages, Nereus III and Nereus IV have taken the hardest hits. Where do we start, Inquisitor?
Just mark the bloodiest hellholes on the star map, Captain. We are going to war.
Yay!
This used to be a thriving capital. Now there is nothing left but ashes. Human livestock. This time your bloodthirst is perfectly thorn. Eradicated.
Now, one thing I forgot to mention in the last video was the whole data vault thing. It reminded me of a bit of lore. There was a chapter of Space Marines. I can't remember which they were, because they were, I think, pretty much just like a one-off chapter. But the whole thing was they were watching over I think it was Storm Wardens? That sounds about right. They were watching over a vault full of different bits of technology and relics and whatnot. And in the process, somehow one of the relics had a demon bound to it, and somehow the demon got loose and started summoning others, and they ended up sacrificing themselves by activating the emergency lockdown for the vault. But the emergency lockdown is archaeotech, and what it did was create essentially a stasis field on the entire planet, which I thought was pretty cool. You know, we don't get to see a lot of really advanced archaeotech like that being utilized. And I think it's like an entire chapter or most of a chapter being trapped, frozen in time on that planet.
Pain is salvation.
I don't think they're ever gonna get released. I think that's part of the whole deal, is like, it's how they're just written out. And that's fine. It kind of sucks because it's like, oh, you think someone would, come knocking and be like, hey, we haven't heard from this chapter in 500 years. What happened? Did they turn traitor? Are they dead? What's going on? And you'd think you'd have someone to investigate, even if it's just like a pre-recorded message just repeating you know, things went wrong, we're all frozen in time.
Cleansing shots fired.
If you're going to, like, deactivate all of this, make sure the Grey Knights are here to deal with the demons. Like, that would be a nice little kind of capstone on all of it, to be like, yep, here's what happened. We're good, but... we don't get that, so we just had to have to deal with some chapters just going dark. Which kind of plays into what I had said a while back, where even though it's a very grim, dark setting, it doesn't feel that dark. Like, yeah, there's a ton of skulls and people dying, but it's... that's honestly not that bleak, at least to me. I think having more instances along the lines of, like, Halo Reach, where as you play it, you know, you grow attached to these characters, and you just, in the back of your mind, you know, hey, Reach was mentioned in the lore before, everyone here most likely is going to die. And then as the game progresses, you watch your squad die. And it's, every time it's like punch to the gut, because you're like, I wasn't expecting them to go out like this, or, you know, you hope for a better one like Cat's death, which always sucked because it was just getting sniped. And, you know, having more instances like that,
be more specific, neighbors. I will sever all of their bonds with great severity. Loading.
but, you know, you could have that. You could have instances where it's a group of, like, Space Marines holding off a horde of Poxwalkers or something, and it's just an entire planet full of them, and you just get, like, the final broadcast of them saying, hey, we're going to fight them to our last man, you know, Ultramarines 3rd Company signing off, and it just ends with that. And it's, instead of being like, oh, they fell to chaos, which always feels really cheap, but just having them die in almost a heroic way, I think that's more grimdark because of the overall setting and knowing, like, a lot of these wars can be just a distraction, or in the grand scheme they mean nothing. Instead of just the cartoony, haha, there's skulls everywhere, isn't it so evil and brooding? Like, nah, man, after a while, skulls just become part of the decoration. It's like Halloween decorations. You see a skull once, you're like, ooh, spooky. You see 100, and you're like, okay, it's a skull. You know, the shock value, it diminishes. And you have to kind of find new ways to do something different and make it interesting. But, like, one thing I noticed in this game is the story... Chaos Bane was able to be like, hey, you know...
Cultists fought harder than the rest. Oh, perhaps he was some kind of leader.
I just skipped whatever dialogue that was, my bad. It's probably just, oh hey, he's probably chaos infused. But what was my train of thought? Oh yeah, Chaos Bane, like, when you're, if you haven't watched it, it's a tiny spoiler just for the Corrin section of it. The guy you talk to, his son, falls to chaos and becomes a high-ranking cultist. I think that is cool, but that's something this game never mentions. Like, we're never dealing with a, like, PDF commander that's like, oh, hey, he's on our side. And then a couple missions later, he vanishes, and it's like, oh, well, he got ambushed. And then you later find out, like, oh, turns out he just turned traitor and fell to chaos. I think that would be pretty interesting. Yeah, it can get overdone very easily, and that is something that has to be kind of kept. As a writer, you have to keep it kind of in your conscience, like, is this going to be overdone? Because if you do it too much, then it becomes very bland, and it's not fun for the reader or the player to experience, because it's like, oh, I can already tell you what's going to happen to this guy. And that's always a problem, is justifying a fall to darkness. So I remember there was a meme where it was like comparing different Florida Man articles, where it's like good villain who you can actually sympathize with and understand their logic, all the way to like a bad villain whose train of thought and schemes are just pointless in the end. Like, they're not even good evil justifications. And like the one that was like something you can sympathize with was a guy who kidnapped a scientist in the hope of making his dog immortal, while like the bad villains, it was some guy doing just, I can't even remember, it was just something completely asinine. But you know, you kind of need that even in 40K. You can't bank on, ooh, it's grimdark for everything. After a while, like I said, it becomes predictable, it becomes very, like, calling it tropey feels wrong because tropes exist for a reason, but it fits also because if you abuse tropes too much, they become pointless. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is if you overuse it, the concept ends up overstaying its welcome, and it becomes a very annoying and cliched thing. Which, now that I think about it, one cliche that I'm actually tired of with 40K is, like, orcs. In general, I'm just kind of getting bored with them from, like, a narrative standpoint, because you look at, like, Space Marines. There's all different kinds of Space Marines, you know? Oh, we're White Scars. We love riding motorcycles. We're essentially the Mongols of space. Oh, we're the Ultramarines, we're blue. Iron Hands. Oh, we work with the tech priests, and we believe that augmenting yourself with mechanical parts is good.
Eradicated.
Salamanders. We like fire. And that's not even including, like, the visual aesthetics. But, like, you have all that. You have that with Chaos. You have it even with Imperial Guard. But then orcs are just like, they're green. They sound like drunk British football hooligans. And it's like, okay, you got any more? There's freebooters who wear pirate hats. It's like, okay, is that literally it? The orcs have so little flavor to them, it's actually astounding. It's like, come on, give me some wacky orc groups. Give me a group that, after fighting like the Imperial Guard so much, they kind of idolize them, and only use like looted Imperial Guard equipment, or they will try to like do wacky stuff like make a like orc stompa, but it's, instead of like arms, it's just two like Lehman Russ tanks bolted to the sides. You know, something where it's like, oh, that's a unique take on this group while making them interesting. Or a group that... I want to see more looted vehicle variants. I'd love to see guys who jack just only Dark Eldar vehicles, or Eldar vehicles. Can you imagine that? Like, the Falcon tanks and all that stuff, but orcified? I think it has a pretty interesting premise. It's just not really expanded on. Tau. Orc with Tau weaponry? That would be really cool. But, you know, the orcs get shafted. They just don't get anything interesting. I feel like they're just kind of like, oh, we need a villain for the Space Marines. Who do we throw at them? Well, we already threw the Chaos at them for a bit. Alright, who do we want to use this time? Orcs? Yeah, throw the green bastards at them. We don't care. We don't need to put effort into making them unique. They're orcs. And that really takes away from the fun of it. Or, like, lean more into the fact that, like, weird boys are their crazy scions. Be like, hey, you know, we've got a group that essentially worship them like shamans.
I found you guilty of heresy.
Just something a little different. Because that's really what the game needs, is just, at least for orcs, they need some flavor added to them. Tau, I think, could use a bit more expansion on their end. I'm trying to think who else. I'd say the Dark Eldar, but Dark Eldar just need a complete expansion. You can't even be like, oh, well, this is just an aesthetic thing. It's, no, they need way more stuff. They really feel like an afterthought. I said before, I'll say it a million times, the dwarves from Age of Sigmar, they got all the steampunk stuff and the dirigibles with friggin' MGs on them. I want those. I want those in 40K. You know, they nuke the squats. They can give me back, you know, squats to steampunk boogaloo. I'll take it. Because, once again, like I said before, we need new races, or, in this case, at the least, new subgroups. Or expansion on subgroups. I said it before. Take salamanders. Give them some unique, like, dreadnought variants. Give them turbo flamers that are just massive. You know, really lean into that. Do something.
Reloading.
That makes them interesting. And I get it to a degree. Oh, it just makes it more difficult to balance. The thing is, you can either have... This is kind of a overall game design thing I've realized. You can either have very few factions, and you're going to be making balance passes continually because someone's going to figure out some little stat boost somewhere that they are like, oh, this is a sleeper faction. They're super good because this one unit can do this one niche thing that you didn't realize. And it's like, okay, now we got to rebalance them, and how is this going to stack up to the others? And it gets kind of annoying. Or the other option is you go full bore, you have a ton of factions, and you kind of let them balance themselves. Which sounds incredibly stupid, but hear me out. the more factions you have, it's harder to balance them all against each other, but it allows you to make certain ones easier to combo or to defeat another. I mean, we already see it to a degree, like, oh, Imperial Guard are a Horde army, so you need, you know, things that counter Horde armies. You do that. You just generalize these a bit more, so that's just, oh, you need just this general concept. Because otherwise, yeah, you're gonna spend all your time trying to balance each individual unit. Is this guy, you know, completely balanced against other tier 2 infantry of this type? It gets monotonous. It's aggravating. So it's like, just make a ton of factions. The only time you really need to step in and be like, hey, yo, this can't happen, is if there's any army that's like, oh yeah, we can just, like, one turn someone. That's not okay. Or, oh, well, we have, like, stupidly high, you know, armor and dodge chance, or something along those lines. So it's like, okay, we just resist all damage.
Warp creature protects the chest.
Didn't even notice it. But, you know, it's things like that where large numbers of factions can kind of balance themselves, because they'll eventually counter each other, or people will find a counter. Wow, none of that looked good. That's a little depressing. I mean, that's just my argument for more factions. It's just, in the end, balance will come. Like, yeah, the Necrons back from, what was it, 6th edition? Necrons? I think it was 6th edition, they were just full-on busted. I knew a guy back in college who played Necrons, and I remember him telling me about it, because I was just getting into 40K. He's like, oh yeah, Necrons are stupidly powerful. They'll just revive, like, the next turn from damn near everything. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that seems pretty broken. He's like, it is. Those are, like I said, only matters like that need to be things where you have to step in and be like, no, this isn't balanced. You just need to make sure your overly broken things are fixed. Because otherwise, yeah, you're going to spend time tuning things for eternity. And that really hurts factions. Plus, more factions means there's more creative opportunities. Like, I remember talking about how there was a guy who had, I think it was like commando knobs, or just knobs in general, who had, it was like 4 or 5 of them wearing parts of a Rhino tank.
Good news indeed. They will pay the price for butchering this city.
They're wearing the hull of a Rhino tank, and when you put them next to each other, it kind of looked like it was cobbled together, and it said, no orcs, humans inside, or something. And it's funny, and it's like, okay, that would be actually a cool thing to have. Or you could have, you know, as dumb as it sounds, like, literally I'm just pulling this one out of my ass, but like ninja orcs. I don't literally mean we need ninja orcs, that sounds incredibly dumb, but it could be interesting. You know, go a little crazy. Make some kind of unique armies, make something weird. The worst thing that happens is you abandon it. And in the end, if that happens, fans will still make their own custom rule set. And people will fight and argue about it until it's balanced.
Noted.
And I think that's honestly kind of the best way you could go about it at that point. Plus, people, if this whole Indomitus thing has shown or taught me anything, it's that people are willing to pay for new stuff for 40k.
You are a thorn in my side, Inquisitor. It's time to gently remove you.
Yeah, let's just run point blank till hear him say he's going to kill me and lose half my health. Yeah, it's like, people are willing to pay for stuff. I saw a lot of people who were like, yeah, Primaris felt like just a cash grab for Space Marine stuff. And I'm like, damn, just make some new, like, sub-chapters. Like, you think people won't pay for that? If you can make, let's say it's an Ultramarine successor chapter. You're like, oh, well, they kind of have their own, like, subset of rules, maybe a unique unit. You can use it with Ultramarines, but the intent is with this group. You think people aren't going to grab that? People will. You just need to do it. And honestly, if you're like, oh yeah, here's some Dreadnought variants, here's a Rhino tank variant, here's, you know, literally anything. Hey, we took a bunch of servitors and stuck C4 on them. It's a unit for Imperial Guard. You think people aren't going to buy that? They'll be like, hey, I can use this. I might be able to finagle this into, you know, an anti-vehicle unit. Because they blow up, they're cheap, you know. People will use it and try to shoehorn it into their armies.
Just in time. The ritual was almost complete. Had they opened the Warp Rift, this planet would have been engulfed by demonic hordes. Alas, there is not much time left to save or reclaim here. Time to return to the ship.
But, you know, in the end, it's just me. What do I know? The best I can do is say what I think. And honestly, I want to hear what other people think about it. Am I crazy with this, or do I actually have a point? And with that, we're going to call it here. So, if you like this episode, please make sure to hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.